This is part 6 of our beans grow along, and we've had quite a heavy frost here last night. So we're going to have a look at the damage that's done. And I don't actually clear away any of the plants. I leave them just to die back naturally, and then I'll clear them away when I'm ready to plant some more. I do this because there'll be insects and things that will be using that dried material, or birds that will be taking it for nests, and I'm a little bit lazy. So that's the easiest way to do it from my point of view. But for our drying beans, we are going to look at harvesting some today. The dwarf drying beans have dried enough on the plants in what has been a really wet year, but the tall or pole varieties haven't actually started drying out at all. So I'm going to harvest a few of those, but the chances are they won't actually leave us viable seeds, sadly. They are likely, when they are too green, just to start rotting either in the pod, or if you start taking them out the pod, then they don't dry very consistently and the moisture levels would just be too high. But we will give that a go and see how we get on. So this is what the frost has done to the runner beans, you can see here, and the beans themselves are also got quite soft and they're not going to be any good now. So we'd harvest so much out of this that I'd actually left lots on the plant in the hope that I would be able to get some for seeds. But in reality, the season's just been too wet and we've not had enough warmth now to actually dry them out. You can see some of them are even rotting in place, so I don't think there's much chance that we are going to have any out of here at all. Some of them have got some quite fat pods that have possibly got some seeds in that I will see if I can dry, but most of them, like this one, when you hold it up to the light, have just, they're tiny inside, even though the beans are really quite large. And then if we move over here, this is where the drying beans are down here. This tall variety was also going to be drying beans, and hiding under there somewhere. There's one there, and then as they mature, they go to a darker colour. But these are ones from the Heritage Seed Library, so I really did want to save these. Once again, I'll give it a go, but I don't think they're going to work, sadly. And now the chances are that they will just die back on the vine. This is what we've got under the cover down here. You can see that they've all started changing colour, so they were as green as the other ones, and they're now starting to feel more like a sort of paper skin on them. This one has completely dried, and now what we're going to do is actually remove the entire plants, and then that will allow us to continue drying them for another couple of weeks. So what I'm going to do is find the roots on each of them and then just cut them off with the secateurs, and then we'll be looking at drying them from there. There will be some that have been eaten by mice and things like that, so that's completely normal, but hopefully there'll be plenty that are good in the pods as well. We're leaving the roots of the beans in the ground as well, because that's always good to feed the soil. So I've got a few of the different types of beans here. So these are one of the runner beans. You can see these are really quite swollen where the seeds are. It's a very long pod. It's an older variety. I am going to do a couple of things with these. First of all, I'm going to leave some on the plants and hope that if we don't have any more frost, that some of them were protected enough in order to continue ripening them on the plant. I'm also going to leave some in the pods, but take them in the house and see if they'll dry out like that. It's most likely that they will just rot within the pods. And then I'm also going to take some of the seeds out as well, and then see if we can dry them inside. So when you're using seeds for cooking, it doesn't really matter if they are completely mature, but if you're using them to try and sow from them again, we do need them completely mature on the plant before we can actually look at using them as seeds. And then they're also going to need to dry properly and not lose too much of their moisture content. When they stay in the pods, that's one of the things that is really helpful, that the moisture content in them is going to be slowly left and taken from them rather than very suddenly, and it can dry out too fast in the house, and then that's not going to leave us with a viable seed. but it is definitely worth giving it a go. You will find some that haven't developed as well within these. That's completely normal, but we definitely want the ones that are looking as fat as possible. One of the other things we will be doing in another video is actually testing these seeds for viability for the ones that do dry well enough, and I'll show you how to do that to make sure that they are okay for next year. So that's just going to go in the compost now, and it's a little bit frost damage, but actually that's got very little, that one. And that's the seeds out of it. And then this is the variety from the Heritage Seed Library, and you see they've gone floppy. It's called Blacksmith. So I'm going to do exactly the same with these. Some are going to be on the plant, some of them are going to be taken out and dried, and some of them will be left in the pods. I'm pretty sure these seeds were black when I actually sowed them. I will check back over my videos and things. So the chances are that they're not actually mature enough either. So it'd be a real shame because I only got 10 seeds. I was really hoping to save some from them. But you can see they're quite large. There's a chance that they might dry out and then be usable again. So that's the Blacksmith ones. And then these are the variety called Yin Yang. So this is just all of the plants removed, and we're going to hang some and then also take some out. So they have a beautiful white and black seeds. So these ones that are in the pods that are pretty much completely dry, you could take them all out now and start drying them just for another week, just to make sure they're completely dry. Or you could leave them in the pods and let them dry out a little bit more and then do that afterwards. I'm going to hang these now and allow them to continue drying in the tunnel before I do pod them all. If you are also using these seeds for eating, you can find that they have some sort of weevils and things that get in them. So popping them in the freezer after they've completely frozen might be an idea as well, just to make sure they are fine. That could cause an issue with the viability with the seed to re-sow them. So you may want to leave some that haven't been popped in the freezer. Any that are still a bit more green may not now dry out enough, but I will see how they go. So I'm going to grab some twine. And then I'm just going to gather each of these together. So I'm going to put them in roughly around 4 each, and then gather the twine around them to hang in the tunnel. The tunnel is still having the heater on where there's any frost, because I've still got my tomatoes in here, but ideally we do want it somewhere that's well ventilated but not going to have proper frost. So if you have got some proper frost in your greenhouse now, you may want to take them into somewhere else. And I'm just going to take them through the plants a couple of times just to stop any falling out if possible, but we'll see. And then that will just be hung by a hook in the tunnel. A garage or a shed would also be a good place to do this as well. You do want to keep these away from any rodents as well, because they will start opening up the pods and helping themselves. Any bits of mud or anything that's on the plant, on the pods, just remove those because we don't want it to sit too wet. Another option is also to take one of the mesh bags, and we've spoken about these before. They're just the ones that are sold in the supermarkets as a produce bag that's reusable, and then just cut off each of these pods. This once again is going to work better if the pods are nearly dry. These are, some of them obviously greener than others, but they are starting to go. If you've been growing pole or tall bean varieties like our French beans to dry them, then this is exactly the same process with them as well. And we're just going to pop a label in with these ones as well, so I know which ones they are. We want to make sure that we have plenty of ventilation, and keep an eye on them as well. If they start going mouldy, then you might need to move them to somewhere that's even more ventilated than you have done. For these ones that we've podded, we want to take them inside the house and dry them out there, but what we don't want to do is put them into an area where it's extremely dry. So I wouldn't put these in our front room near our wood burner, just because they're going to dry too quickly and then it'll be difficult to rehydrate them to use either as seeds or in cooking. So this is what they look like now, and we'll be coming back to these now in around 2 to 4 weeks. It's really going to depend on the temperatures. If we continue to have a lot of hard frost and the heat is not going to be on in here, then I would have to be thinking about moving them somewhere that they're not going to get too much frost. But ideally, we want some really good sort of autumn sunshine to dry these out nicely now, and that should hopefully get them as dry as possible before we remove those pods. If you're not looking to dry your beans, but you'd still like to use some of the beans that have got fatter inside the pods and you haven't harvested them before they have got a freeze, then you can see there's certain ones that have got a little bit of damage from the frost, but there'll be other ones that have no damage at all. You could still pop these in the freezer or use them from fresh. So even if your beans have had a little bit of a frost on the outside, it doesn't mean that the beans themselves aren't usable.